In this video, I'm going to share with you exactly the steps I took to get started going down the process of obtaining guardianship or conservatorship over my soon-to-be 18-year-old child. And if you're going to be going through that process yourself, you can follow along as I accomplish that. As most things today happen, it started with a Google search. I went online and searched for the phrase conservatorship in California. I'm in California. I would suggest you do something similar to that in the state that you're in. And it might be called guardianship or something else, but I was searching for conservatorship here in California. And it brought me to some links that were related to the Superior Court here in California. So I assume then that Superior Court is going to be the one that manages the conservatorship or slash guardianship here in California. It might be something similar to yours in your state, but it's probably going to be the courthouse that is the one that's responsible for civil or family or matters. But it shouldn't take you long to be able to track down which one of your courthouses is the ones that is primarily responsible for that. So I went online and I got a phone number and I called and got somebody called me back and he walked me through the process of what it takes, what it's involved. And I'm going to break it down to you basically as I understood it from yesterday's call with this gentleman. There's essentially going to be a discussion on the conservatorship of the estate and the conservatorship of the person. And with that, how he described it to me was on the estate is his dollars, his cents. I'm talking about my son, his money, his bills, the payments, and the financial piece of that. And on the person is, can he manage his own affairs? Can he bathe himself? Can he clean himself? Does he need any help on that? Can he make decisions about his own medical care? And on and on and on. So if you look at it in those two areas that you're going to be looking in terms of having control over, and I'll tell you why I'm sort of hemming on that one, because it's turns out to be one of the most controversial things that I've ever did a webinar on from the perspective of the child who was the conservatee. They felt like in some cases that the parents were being overly restrictive. They were very resentful of that. So that's something you should probably talk with your personal advisors about if your child has the ability to, or will have the ability, or may have the ability to be more in control of his own or her own affairs. And then you probably should have some kind of avenue for that to happen automatically, or at least on an annual review, whatever the process is in your state and your location. But it was a really big deal. All right, so getting back to that. So then I asked him, so what areas do people tend to get in trouble with here? And he said, usually it's relating to areas of responsibility. His suggestion was that since my son's mother and I are separated, and we have two separate households, he says typically what people do is they assign someone to be responsible for X, Y, and Z tasks. Let's say paying his bills, collecting his bills, doing the financial reports, deciding where he's going to live, who's going to help support those care, who's making the medical decisions, et cetera, et cetera. So this person's responsible for that. That person's responsible for this. And that way, if something goes wrong, the court can look at it and say, oh, this was in Keith's area or this was in Nicole's area. Therefore, that person needs to fix whatever is the problem that the judge is looking at. In my case, I said, I'm less concerned about that because my ex-wife and I have a really great relationship. We've been divorced now, I don't know, 10, 12 years. It's been a long time. And we get along fabulously. We co-parent very well. I think most people who know us would say, without a doubt, that we are probably a really good example of that. So I'm less concerned about that because one of the things he told me is that if Nicole is responsible for A, B, and C, and I'm responsible for E, D, and F, or D, E, and F, then if something happens to either of us, then the other person needs to go back to the court to petition the court to get those additional powers. And I said that's an unnecessary step in our case, just because we would make those decisions collectively. I would never go in and say, hey, my son's doing this thing and you better just take it no matter what. That's not good for co-parenting. That's not good for our post-marriage relationship. So I would never do that, and she would never do that to me either. We communicated very well. So in my case, I think we're going to go ahead and not do the itemized thing. We're going to both be what they call co-conservators. And that means that we can both make decisions on either. And that way, if something happens to me or something happens to her, I'm already in charge of that other area that she was primarily responsible for, and vice versa. I think that just sort of makes sense for us, but you sort of need to think through your own relationship with your ex as well. And then there's a discussion, and I'm sure I'm going to come to this later, but I know I'm going to be thinking about it, is a discussion of who is after you. For those who know anything about me, know I lost my after me unexpectedly in May of 2021, who died unexpectedly. So that was going to be the person after me. So I don't have someone after me now. And the person who would be after me is my 21-year-old son. And I don't think a 21-year-old being thrust to be responsible for the care and finances of his autistic younger brother is really a fair way to start someone out. So I'm going to try to find someone who I trust, who could be in between myself and my son, who could, manage that, be that role for 10, 12 years until my son is grown up into the age to be able to do that more reasonably. So those are some of the things I know we're going to talk about. But I got a package of stuff, about 50 pages, and it's specific to my county in California. So I'm sure you could contact your county and they would mail you, or you can go by and pick it up, the package. And I don't know what's in it. It's very, very long. So I'm assuming I'm going to need some help on that. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to endeavor to do it on my own. But in California, at least, we have a free legal aid, and I'm going to make an appointment with those guys to go over on a Zoom call of which one of these pieces of paper I needed to start with, and ask them the questions in terms of which ones will I need to have a little bit more lead time on, et cetera. My goal is to get this completed by October, just because I'm going to be gone on the East Coast for my dad's funeral services later in October. So that's why I want to do it before I go, and it's like a 2-month lag. So that would mean January-ish, they would be scheduling the hearing, and then my son's going to turn 18 in April. So I think I have a little bit of time. One other thing I'm going to bring up, the guy I spoke to told me that's really important in California. I'm not sure it's going to be the same in other states. They might have different kind of things, but in California, we have something called a regional center. A regional center is the primary organization who's overseeing people who have a disability after the age of 18, and even before that. Parents are, but Alta Regional Center has a mandate to sort of help provide services after he turns 18 or after 22 when he's out of the school system. So they have to write a report to say that, yes, they are in agreement that my son or my daughter, if I had one who had a disability, does not have the mental capacity to manage his or her own affairs. So they go out and do research, they go out and analyze it, put together a report that they submit to the court. That's something that's going to take some time. So I would encourage you to send that email request off, ask for confirmation that they received it and that they're working on it, so that that process can get started, so you're not waiting to the last minute to say, oh, I need that report from this other entity. And they're like, well, I'm 6 months out or 3 months out or whatever it is. So that's something I did yesterday. I sent that email off. I've not gotten my response that they've received it yet, but I'm going to be patiently give them a couple days. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to make an appointment with the free legal advice folks. I'm going to wait for my email back from Alta saying that they're on it. And then I'm going to continue to update you along the way. I gave my ex-wife an update on the process, the timelines, and what I was going to be expecting from her. I'm taking lead on it. And that's really sort of how we've always split up the responsibilities in our relationship. So what else? All right, I think that's a good start. I will keep you updated. Again, my target is mid-October to be complete, to submit it to the courts, and start that process. And I'll keep reporting to you guys as I learn more.